Okay, so picture this with me. We've got this crazy, powerful, sacred object, right? It's been hidden away, like forever. And now, this young king, he decides it's time to dust this thing off. It's time for this treasure to, take center stage. It's got to play a big part in his kingdom story. And that's what we're diving into today, this whole journey of the Ark of the Covenant with King David.
And let me tell you, sometimes the most straightforward journeys, they have the most unexpected twists and turns.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we are talking about King David, right? This guy, he's just consolidated his power. He's made Jerusalem his capital. It's a big deal.
Huge.
And now he wants to bring the Ark of the Covenant, that like ultimate symbol of God's presence, right into the heart of the city. Can you imagine? It's like victory parade time.
Yeah, makes sense. David wants to establish Jerusalem as the religious center for his people, right?
Yeah.
What better way to do that than by bringing in the ark?
Exactly. So picture it. It's this huge celebration. I'm talking music, singing, dancing in the streets, the whole 9 yards. They even build a brand new ox cart just for the ark. First Chronicles chapter 13, it lays it all out there. But then, and you knew this was coming, things get a little messy.
Yeah, things go sideways.
It's like someone hit the pause button on the party.
The oxen stumble. And it starts to tip. You can just imagine, right? It's like this heart-stopping moment, And a man named Uzzah, he's one of the attendants, and he just reaches out instinctively to steady it.
Oh, no.
And that's where things get really, really interesting because Uzzah, he meant well, of course, but he actually broke a major rule here. We're talking about a sacred boundary.
Big time. See, the ark wasn't just some symbolic relic, right? It was considered the dwelling place of God's presence on earth. And traditionally, only the Levites, they're a specific priestly tribe, they were allowed to carry it. And even then, they had to use these special poles, and they couldn't touch the ark itself. So Uzzah was a little too hands-on in a very much no hands-on zone. And the consequences, well, they were immediate and severe.
Yeah, the text tells us that God was angry. Uzzah died right there on the spot.
Right there.
But before anyone starts picturing lightning bolts from the sky, it's important to understand this isn't about a vengeful God, right? It's about boundaries. It's about approaching something sacred with reverence, with respect.
It's like, accidentally touching a live wire. You might not have meant to, but the consequences, they're serious.
For sure.
So David, he's understandably shaken. I mean, 1 minute it's this giant party, and the next minute, someone's dead. And the whole procession stops screeching home.
Yeah. It's a total mood killer.
Yeah.
And you could practically feel David's fear, like in 1 Chronicles 13:12, he's like, how can I bring the ark of God home to me? And it's not just a logistical question for him. It's deeper than that. It's this moment of serious self-reflection for David. He realizes, okay, I messed up. Good intentions, not enough. He needed to understand the why behind the how.
It's like that moment when you're so sure your presentation is going to be a hit, but then the tech fails. Or maybe you think you have the perfect solution at work, but then it totally backfires.
Yeah.
David's ark fiasco. It was kind of like that, but on a much larger scale.
And that now what moment for David, it's a turning point in the story. He realizes, okay, I need to figure out how to do this the right way. So he leaves the ark with a man named Obed-Edom while he figures things out. And it's interesting, the text actually mentions that Obed-Edom, he prospers during this time.
It's like almost a little wink from the narrator, Like a subtle reminder that sometimes stepping back and reassessing, well, it can lead to unexpected blessings.
It's like, one of those life lessons, right? Slow down to speed up. It's a marathon, not a sprint, that whole thing. David's pause with the ark. It wasn't a defeat, really. It was strategic, like a regrouping.
Totally. It's not like the guy had nothing else on his plate, right?
Yeah.
He's got a kingdom to run. And guess who is not thrilled about David's newfound power?
No, let me guess.
The Philistines. They were kind of hoping things would stay exactly the same, with them running the show.
Of course. Yeah, David being in charge, it's a total power shift. The Philistines, they see him as a threat. And, I mean, I get it.
For sure. Things get pretty intense, actually. If you look at 1 Chronicles chapter 14, we see David's got this whole military campaign thing going on, battles, victories. It's a lot. But here's something interesting. Before David goes head-to-head with the Philistines, every single time he asks God for guidance. He doesn't just, charge in. He wants to make sure he's doing the right thing,
Which says a lot about David's journey, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
After that whole ark incident, he's learned. Approaching things with humility, seeking guidance. It's not just about rituals. This is how he leads.
It's like he's thinking, okay, I get it. Being king, this is serious business.
Exactly. And while this is happening, the battles, establishing his power, he never forgets about the ark. He's still working on how to bring it to Jerusalem, but, the right way this time.
So 3 months pass. The ark is with Obed-Edom. And David, he decides it's time for attempt number 2.
Round 2.
And let me tell you, this time, no messing around. No casual ox carts, no crossed fingers. We are going by the book here. I'm talking ancient instructions for transporting the ark. He's following them all.
Wow. Talk about attention to detail.
I'm telling you. 1 Chronicles 15, it describes the whole thing. This time, it's the Levites. They're wearing those priestly robes, and they're carrying the ark on their shoulders, using those special poles exactly like they're supposed to. Oh, and get this, every 6 steps, they stop. And they make a sacrifice. They are not taking any chances this time.
Wow. Talk about a 180 from that first attempt. So David took that whole that mishap and used it. The opportunity to learn, not just what he was doing wrong, but the why.
It's a whole new vibe, too. Remember that stunned silence after, This time, it's different. There's this joy, this celebration, this deep reverence. It's electric. There's music, singing, the shofar.
You can practically hear the relief when they finally get the ark to Jerusalem. Mission accomplished. But
there's always a but, right?
Always a but. Remember Michal, David's wife? Well, she sees him dancing and celebrating, and let's just say she's less than impressed.
Yeah, she's not exactly throwing confetti, is she?
No, not quite. 1 Chronicles 15.209 Entod, it says she despised him in her heart. Talk about awkward, right? They just pulled this off. It's a huge moment. You'd think she'd be happy. But Michal, this reaction, it really throws a wrench in things.
It really makes you wonder, right? Like, hello, we just had this epic procession. What's the issue? How do we even begin to make sense of Michal and how she's acting here?
Well, it's like a lot of these stories, there's no easy answer. We're dealing with some pretty old texts, It's open to interpretation. But some scholars think that maybe Michal, she was jealous.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, maybe she felt threatened. I mean, David's in charge now. He's got power.
Yeah.
And God's clearly on his side. That's got to sting a little.
Okay, so there's a little palace drama happening under the surface here.
Could be. Others point to how she grew up. Remember Michal's the daughter of King Saul, the guy who God rejected? She would have a very different understanding of what it means to be king, especially in relation to religious expression. So David, he's being super public with his faith. Maybe that was just too much for her.
So maybe it's like they're speaking 2 totally different languages when it comes to faith.
Exactly. And don't forget the cultural context, right? For a king to be dancing publicly and with, let's just say, enthusiasm, that would have been a big no-no. Undignified even.
Yeah.
Michal's reaction, it might just be her, following the social rules of the time.
So it's like this perfect storm, right? You've got her own personal history, cultural expectations, maybe even a little bit of political maneuvering sprinkled in.
And it's interesting. The text doesn't really try to explain Michal. It just leaves us hanging. We get to decide how to see her.
It's true. And it's something people have been debating for centuries.
Yeah.
It's this great reminder that even when things seem simple, there's usually more going on than we realize. And sometimes it's those unspoken things, the different points of view, those can teach us the most.
Absolutely. The story of the ark. It's more than just following the rules. It's about understanding those rules, respecting what's sacred, approaching things with humility. Because honestly, our own journeys, how often do they actually go according to plan?
It's about learning from the mistakes, getting back on track, and realizing sometimes a detour. That's what gets us where we need to be. So as you're going about your week, think about this. What are the arcs that you're carrying, those dreams you have, the goals you're working towards, anything that's important to you? Are you approaching those things with the same thoughtfulness, the reverence that David finally learns? It's something to think about.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.